Now, some of the other things that I think are important to see in COP, though, is that there's good news and there's bad news, right? The good news, I'm like, should I start with the bad news or should I start with the good news? What do you all think? Should I start with the bad news or should I start with the good news? Maybe I will start. I'm looking at the comments to see if there's any opinions here. Now, anyways, so I'll start with bad news so that I can end with good news. Okay, I'm seeing here people are saying bad news. I'll start with the bad news so that we can go with the good news. The bad news is that I think if you are under the age of, 40, the ambitions and timelines that people are setting out are not good enough for us. I mean, COP, like the whole big thing with COP is we're going to go net zero on emissions by 2050. And like, that's like this big ambitious thing. And the thing is, it's like a lot of these people making these decisions are, and I'm sorry because people get very upset with me. People are always kind of throwing these accusations of ageism towards me and all of these things. But I mean, there is just a basic biology here that we have to contend with, which is that if you are under the age of 40, you are very likely going to you have a very high possibility of seeing the year 2050. And that creates a totally different set of incentives than if you are older, making decisions for a time when you will no longer be alive to see them. And older people have grandchildren and they care about their grandchildren. And for some, for huge populations of people who care about their grandkids, that puts a skin in their game for their fight. But that frankly does not apply to all older people. Some of those people are they think that if they are rich enough, that they will able to have their kids inherit enough wealth to shield them from the climate crisis. And that is simply not going to be the case. And I don't think that has really sunk in yet for a lot of people. And so for some folks, when we see this thing of net zero by 2050, they're like, yeah, like this is great. This is a huge transition, like all of those things. And that might be relative to the status quo now, but for us, that's really not good enough. So let's talk about why net zero by 2050 is not really acceptable for young people. And this was really one of the central calls from the streets and protesters outside of COP this year. It was net zero by 2050 is ridiculous. And the reason that they say that is because of the following. Net zero emissions does not mean zero emissions. So what we're talking about is by the year 2050, we will still be, that's Deco. We will still be emitting fossil fuel emissions, CO2, methane, etc. And that's still what that means, net zero. The net means they're saying, we're going to be invested in and engaged in so much drawdown technology and drawdown practices that the amount that we're going to be drawing down is going to be equal to the amount that we're emitting. So it's going to be a wash. So that's great. By 2050. So that's not even a promise that we will have zero emissions even before I'm dead or any of us may die, and that is it's just not acceptable in a world of 1.5, 2 degrees, etc. Of Celsius worth of warming, because I don't think it's sunk in for a lot of people. A lot of people may not know this. We're living our day-to-day lives, but the stakes here are really huge. What we're seeing right now, for example,